still, making videos is no easy task. I always judge it much more harshly until I watch it. And when I watch it, I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. So if you're doing videos, remember, before you overly judge it, watch it. Because it's probably not nearly as bad or harsh as you're thinking it is. Not harsh. Well, maybe. I don't know. So, I was reading The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. And there's a point when he is describing listening to music while high on mescaline, psychedelics, and it made me think that's something that I've done over the years, especially with music. Like, if there's a band that I specifically like, but I don't know much about them, sometimes I'll get really stoned and listen to them and see how I react. And that will just add to the experience of the music. Now, I have to say, Nirvana was one of those bands. But this is like early 1988. Literally. See, this is so crazy to explain this. So, Kurt gave me the first recording with Dale playing drums. I think it was March of 1988. And I remember getting stoned with friends, really stoned. And I also listened to that on Psychedelics because I was doing mushrooms once in a while. Like, maybe once a year, maybe twice a year. I was never that much into psychedelics. It was just once in a while. But that tape would be a tape I'd listen to, and with people, with friends. And I was in contact with Kurt. That's how I got the tape in the first place. But I didn't really know him very well at that point. By like March of 1988, I'd probably talked to him on the phone a few times and talked to him in person just a couple times. Something like that. Like, we were just kind of becoming friends, you know? I just met him the first time only a few months before that in 1987. Like, probably November. I'd have to look to see the exact show, but the Skid Row show. But I remember being really, really stoned and listening to like Paper Cuts and Aero Zeppelin specifically. And I mean, there's so many songs on there, and just listening to the whole thing, you know. And the very last song before it goes into the montage is one of my favorites. But just feeling like, man, I wish more people could hear this, you know, type thing. But also like feeling like this guy's incredibly intense, and there's something. How do I explain it? It's that feeling when you feel like there's so much that this person's not telling you, you know, like, it's like the difference between listening to Paper Cuts and just hanging out with Kurt, you know. It was like I just knew this guy was like incredibly intense, and the songwriting was just like, at the same time, you know, I was working on songs or whatever, so it's so hard to try to explain. But I knew that there was this incredible intensity in this guy, this really nice, soft-spoken, friendly person, that I just became friends with, is this amazing freaking songwriter. Like, instantly. I mean, that tape was one of my very favorite tapes. And I had a few friends at that, around that same time, I'd get stoned with, specifically like Ryan and, Mike Ogre, Paul Hunt, um, members in Subvert. I'd bust out the tape and play it for all of them, and they liked it. Um, I think it was like, it was something completely different, but for me, listening to that tape, being stoned, or not stoned, but stoned, and on mushrooms. God, I wish I could remember. I mean, when you're on mushrooms, it's like you're in another world, but I know I listened to that on mushrooms. And it's probably like, it was probably like experiencing a whole nother realm at that, it's so intense. But anyway, so still, if I'm really stoned, well, I don't put on Nirvana stuff as much. It's too like, it's too unhappy. Like, I'll go to an unhappy place in my head. But back then, it was so exciting because not only was this like my favorite music, friends, and when are they playing next? Oh, they're playing next month? I'm there, kind of thing, right? Um, and and I look at, it's almost like time traveling, sharing this with you guys. And I mean, it's still like that, but when I listen to that first recording, it still feels like nobody's ever heard it in a way. Um, because for at least a couple years, that's still how it felt. you know nobody nobody else knew, in a sense, or not that many people got it. It was like, and I really felt like, well, I guess I'm just lucky. It's like, hey, this is great music, and and I'm stoked that I'm able to hear it, or something. So it's so bizarre to think about, but what made me tell the story is, reading that Aldous Huxley, and he was talking about how somebody put on a classical record, and it wasn't as intense as looking at a flower when he was on mescaline or whatever. But then somebody put on a record with vocals, and it took him to a completely different place. That was what did he say? Like, that was his. Um, it brought him back to earthbound with the voices, or I don't know, I forget how he said it, but yeah, I haven't listened to Bleach in a while. I might put on Bleach soon. It's just hard. It's hard to listen to. It's like, I can't just I can't just rock out and get into it anymore. It's it's really hard to listen to the same, you know. It's hard to listen to very much Nirvana. I put it on once in a while, but I don't know. It's more like I get very frustrated and kind of upset and frustrated. And anyway, I'm sure you guys can understand. Anyway, all right. Take care. Bye.